All right, let's take a moment to just retrace information that we've talked about previously on genetics, and then let's get to some new material. We start with the evolutionary concept that from amoeba in pond scum, we have the production of all living systems over 530 million years of time. The hero of the plot is time. But there is no evidence whatsoever, only speculation that this has occurred. And you said in another program that evolutionists are
very good at two things: making up fascinating stories and drawing excellent pictures of non-existent things. Neither of those is science, a story or a picture. But that's what their main upholding of their belief is: stories and pictures. That is not science.
Such as the tree of life.
The tree of life.
Illustrating, and all of these are wonderful living systems. But they did not develop one from the other.
Exactly.
They're all necessary for the ecosphere. The plants are necessary to provide food for us. Transportation from the horses is very nice. Mimicry among the gibbons and the baboons, you know, they're marvelous at mimicry, and they keep us laughing.
Right.
I think God created them to be the comedians, and they do a good job. And there's comparison of various hands, but you previously made a tremendous statement in that the following, in the genetic production.
And here we have the comparison of a newt, a salamander, a frog, which are three types of amphibians. Then we have a lizard, which is just a land creature. Then we have two birds, a swift and a grebe. The filled-in circles here represent the genes that control those developments of a front leg, hind leg, in these first four, the three amphibians and then the lizard. But the birds have different genes that control the development of their wings. And so make any mutations you want here in any of these, you will never get a wing because they're different genes.
That's a huge statement that you just made, because evolutionary dogma states that these wings and leg appendages came from the appendages of the reptiles.
Exactly.
Scientifically impossible. Different placement altogether. So this audience needs to know we're talking about real science.
Exactly.
When we critique evolutionary postulates, we do it with respect, but we do it with accuracy. You pointed out what to me was absolutely amazing. Ernst Haeckel, the evangelist of deceit of the evolutionary community, and evolutionaries, scientists today are admitting that he was deceitful in all that he did. He was tried by his own university, found guilty of fraud.
In the early 1900s.
And yet his work is still in the text today. And so he asked a student to give him, as you pointed out before, and the embryonic development of a dog, the same phase of a human, totally different, even though there's similarities, like we have a backbone, a dog has a backbone. What he produced for his text was to show them almost identical. That's absolute fraud.
See.
And then, in that deceit, here is what affected me very early in my academic studies. The fish, the salamander, the turtle, the chicken, the rabbit, the human, embryonic development, all appears to be essentially identical. That's in his deceitful, fraudulent text. But that's what is propagated even until today in the text.
Here we have a real science, Carl, real science that could take actual photographs of these very small embryos at the same time of development, and we see absolute drastic differences, not only between what Haeckel drew, but also between one another. This is real science. This is evolutionary fraud, and it's so important that our viewers realize that. And of course, this goes right back to what we said. They're excellent at making excellent pictures of non-existent things.
Yes.
That is not science.
That is not science. And you've emphasized that we do have genetic mutations. Changes occur. Now let's get to some information that this audience needs to enjoy. And I thank you, Professor Pendleton, for bringing this to our attention. Tell us what information you have.
Well, the first one I think is really good is the famous fruit fly, properly called Drosophilus, and that they've been able to, this fly comes from newborn. Usually if you leave some fruit or food too long in the kitchen, these little bitty flies appear. And they can develop from recently born to being parents in about 2 weeks. And so they were an ideal candidate to have a fast generational time. And so they've been subjected over 100 years to darkness, to excess light, to gases, poisons, X-ray, Y-ray, Z-ray, all kinds of stuff to produce mutations. And guess what? They produce mutations.
Yes, we've changed the code.
Right. Here's one that has 8 legs instead of 6. This one has curved wings, flies in a circle. This one turned out a bit darker than the rest. This one didn't have any wings. I don't know if they call it a crawl instead of a fly. This one has sepia eyes and lined eyes. Here's a more impressive one. This one has an eye where it should have an antenna. And the most famous one is this one that came out with 4 wings instead of 2. Guess what? It couldn't fly.
It couldn't fly.
And the only place it could reproduce would be in the laboratory, because out in the real world, it would be the first one to be eliminated.
Yes, and this audience needs to know that genetic information for 4 wings, for an eye instead of an antenna, was all in the original code of the Drosophila melanogaster fruit fly, but the radiation shifted it and made it totally non-viable.
Right, and the thing is, too, is they just did, and the thing is, they've made over 30,000 different mutations in a period of 100 years, and guess what? It's still a fruit fly.
Still a fruit fly.
And, of course, this is amazing. Now, that's real science. That's real science. But it's exactly what God said there would be, everything according to its species, after its kind. God developed the second law of biology 6,000 years ago.
Absolutely. And I understand, because we've done some work with Drosophila melanogaster, these fruit flies. You put them all together, turn them loose, and natural selection eliminates these deviants, and you get a wholesome strain of fruit flies.
Exactly, exactly.
But there's more.
Well, this is a kind of an interesting one. Here is the lungfish. This lives in Africa. It's an amazing creature. It has just one lung, and it lives in the rivers and lakes of Africa. And it has an amazing ability to sense when it's coming a drought. It forms into a ball, buries itself in the mud. It can have a drought that lasts absolutely for 3 months or 3 years. And the thing is, then it comes out and reproduces. Friends of mine who are teachers of the university have this publication, which is about fish, and it says this. I took this exact quote from there. The lungfish above, though classified as a fish, is a notable example of the phase of transition that the primitive fish could have known. Did you hear that, Carl?
Could have known.
Did they see it? Did they see it? They didn't see it. They said it could have known.
So he's omniscient.
No. They said that he could have known this. He might have known this. It might have happened. And what they're saying is we hope, we wish. This is what evolutionists are saying. Could have known before converting themselves into amphibians like the salamander below. We've never seen it happen. They had to say could have known. Now, what they say is a real proof of evolution is that there are bacteria that are resistant to antibiotics.
We need to major on this quickly, but we need to major. Now, let's make the point that mutations do occur. Here you have in the same family twins, identical twin girls, except that one is dark, one is light.
One has brown eyes, one has blue eyes.
Marvelous. The same parents, born at the same time.
Right.
So mutations do occur. But now, straighten this out, the major emphasis at the university to influence the students in advanced studies in microbiology that evolution has occurred is the fact that, according to evolutionary experiments, we have bacteria that has become resistant to antibiotics. Therefore, it is evolving a superior technique. Tell us about it, please,
Okay,
John.
this simple diagram, we have 3 dead bacteria, one that's living. It doesn't affect him or her. Now, the thing is that there's a simple process, is that there has to be a certain enzyme or protein on the bacteria that connects to that antibiotic. If it doesn't connect, it won't die. Now, if it doesn't have that protein or enzyme, it's a defective bacteria. It's not a superior one.
That's right. It's not increased information. It's lost information.
And now here's an amazing thing. In the 1800s, there was an expedition called the Franklin Expedition way in the north of the Arctic. And unfortunately, many of these men died frozen. This expedition was found over 150 years later. And here's one of the bodies, and they were able to glean from the body and revive this bacteria from that time.